My name is Alexandra, and at 31 years old, I never expected to be standing outside my own father's celebration party, being told I wasn't good enough to enter. My sister Brittany blocked the doorway, her eyes scanning my simple outfit with disgust. "No cheap clothes at Dad's party," she hissed, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. That moment of humiliation would soon turn into the most unexpected power shift our family had ever experienced. If you have ever been judged based on your appearance, leave a comment below this video and hit the like button to let me know where you are watching from. Growing up in the Miller family was never simple. My father, Richard, now 58, built his construction empire from nothing. Born to working-class parents in a small Midwest town, he often told us stories about wearing the same pair of shoes for 3 years straight because they couldn't afford new ones. Through sheer determination and countless 18-hour workdays, he transformed a small contracting business into Miller Construction Group, now valued at over $80 million. My sister Brittany, 35, has always been the apple of my father's eye. After graduating with her MBA, she immediately stepped into the role of vice president at the family company. Her entire identity revolves around designer clothes, luxury cars, and being recognized as Richard Miller's daughter. She thrives on the appearances of success almost more than success itself. At every family gathering, business function, or public event, Brittany makes sure everyone knows exactly how important she is. Our family dynamic changed forever when Mom died of breast cancer when I was 15. She was the peacekeeper, the one who reminded Dad that there was more to life than business acquisitions and profit margins. After her passing, the warmth slowly drained from our home, replaced by an almost clinical focus on achievement and status. Dad retreated into his work, and Brittany quickly positioned herself as the new maternal figure. Despite lacking Mom's compassion and understanding, my younger brother Noah, 27, has always been caught in the middle. Sensitive and artistic, he never quite fit into Dad's vision of the family legacy. He works in the marketing department at Miller Construction, creating beautiful designs that Dad appreciates but never fully understands. Noah has often been my ally, the only one who sees through the superficial values that have overtaken our family. The tension between Brittany and me started in high school but intensified after college. While she followed Dad's precisely outlined path, I chose to forge my own way. I still remember the Christmas dinner 6 years ago when I announced I wouldn't be joining the family business. "You're turning your back on everything Dad built for us," Brittany said, her voice dripping with judgment. "What, you think you're too good for Miller Construction?" The truth was exactly the opposite. I didn't think I was too good for the family business. I just wanted to succeed or fail on my own merits. I wanted to know if I could make it without the Miller name opening doors for me. After graduating with my finance degree, I took an entry-level position at Westfield Investments, one of the largest investment firms on the East Coast. I started in the mailroom, deliberately not using Dad's connections, and worked my way up through sheer grit and countless late nights. What my family didn't know was how far I had actually climbed. For years into my career, I was appointed to lead Westfield's emerging markets division. A year after that, I became the youngest chief investment officer in the company's history. 6 months ago, I was named chairman of the entire organization, overseeing billions in investments across 12 countries. The irony? Westfield was currently negotiating the largest investment deal in my father's company history, a $200 million expansion project that would double Miller Construction's size and reach. I kept my position secret from my family, partly because I wanted to be absolutely certain there was no conflict of interest in the Westfield-Miller deal, and partly because I was waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. I had recused myself from the negotiations, letting our acquisitions team handle everything. As far as my family knew, I was just a mid-level manager at some investment firm. My personal style had always been another point of contention. While Brittany dressed exclusively in designer labels, I preferred simple, practical clothing. Not because I couldn't afford luxury items, but because I valued comfort and functionality over brand names. My salary was now 7 times what Brittany made, Yet, she constantly made snide comments about my discount store wardrobe. Dad's party tonight was celebrating the official signing of the Westfield deal, scheduled for the following Monday. It was the crowning achievement of his career, the validation of decades of hard work. Despite my hectic schedule, I had promised to attend. What I hadn't promised was that I would dress to Brittany's standards. The morning of Dad's party was absolute chaos at Westfield headquarters. Our lead counsel had discovered a potential regulatory issue with the Miller construction deal that needed immediate attention. I was in the office by 5:30 a.m., running on 3 hours of sleep and my fourth cup of coffee. Alexandra, Marcus Westfield is on line 1, my assistant Jessica said, poking her head into my office. He says it's about the Miller contract. My stomach tightened. Marcus Westfield was the founder and majority shareholder of Westfield Investments. At 72, he was still actively involved in major deals, and his opinion carried immense weight. If he had concerns about the Miller contract, the entire deal could be in jeopardy. Marcus, good morning, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. What can I do for you? Alexandra, my dear, his deep voice rumbled through the speaker. I want to personally review the Miller proposal before Monday's signing. Something about the infrastructure estimates seems off to me. For the next 3 hours, Marcus and I went through every line of the 120-page contract, discussing contingencies and projections. By the time we finished, it was already afternoon, and I still had a board meeting and 2 client calls scheduled before I could even think about preparing for Dad's party. The board meeting ran long, with heated discussions about our Asia-Pacific strategy. One of our senior directors kept challenging my projections, forcing me to defend data I had spent weeks analyzing. By the time we adjourned, it was after 4 p.m., and Dad's party was scheduled to begin at 6. My phone rang as I was gathering my materials. Noah's name flashed on the screen. Hey, you still coming tonight, right? He asked, his voice tinged with anxiety. Dad's been asking about you. Of course I am, I assured him. It's going to be tight, but I'll make it. Just a heads up, Noah said, lowering his voice. Brittany has gone full dictator mode. She's literally inspecting everyone's outfits as they arrive. She turned away Dad's golf buddy Phil because he wore loafers instead of dress shoes. I glanced down at my simple black pants and white button-down shirt. Professional, clean, but definitely not the formal attire Brittany would be expecting. I don't have time to go home and change, I said, feeling a familiar tension headache building behind my eyes. I've been in back-to-back meetings all day. Maybe keep a dress in your office for emergencies? Noah suggested. The dress I keep here is at the cleaners, I sighed. Look, this is Dad's night. It's about him, not about what I'm wearing. Brittany will just have to deal with it. After hanging up, I stared out my office window at the Manhattan skyline, thinking about my complicated relationship with Dad. Despite our differences, I loved him deeply and was genuinely proud of all he had accomplished. Since Mom died, we had drifted apart, my decision to leave the family business creating an unspoken barrier between us. Tonight was important, not just for Dad's business milestone, but perhaps as a chance to begin rebuilding our relationship. I had intended to tell him about my position at Westfield after the contract signing on Monday, once all the negotiations were complete. I wanted him to know that his daughter had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations, but on her own terms. By 5:30, I was finally able to leave the office. I freshened up in the bathroom, applied a quick touch of makeup, and brushed my hair. My outfit was neat and professional, just not the formal evening where that would be expected at a high-end celebration. There was no time to shop or go home to change if I wanted to be there close to when the party started. As my taxi crawled through rush-hour traffic, I rehearsed what I would say to Dad. It had been nearly 2 months since we'd spoken in person, both of us consumed by our respective businesses. Would he be happy to see me? Or disappointed that I hadn't made more effort with my appearance? The thought made my stomach clench with a familiar anxiety that dated back to my teenage years. The taxi finally pulled up to the Riverside Grand Hotel at 6:20. I paid the driver and took a deep breath, preparing myself for what would inevitably be a tense encounter with Brittany. But for Dad's sake, I would try to keep the peace. The Riverside Grand was one of the most exclusive hotels in the city, its marble facade illuminated by elegant outdoor lighting. A row of luxury cars lined the circular driveway, Bentleys and Mercedes, dropping off guests in formal attire. Women in evening gowns and men in tailored suits flowed through the grand entrance, their jewelry catching the light as they moved. I felt a twinge of self-consciousness as I approached. My simple outfit, though perfectly appropriate for a professional setting, looked starkly understated compared to the formal wear around me. Still, I reminded myself, this was about supporting Dad, not making a fashion statement. As I approached the ballroom entrance, I could see Brittany standing near the door like a sentinel, dressed in a shimmering silver gown that probably cost more than some people's monthly rent. Her hair was professionally styled, her makeup flawless. She was speaking with the event coordinator, gesturing emphatically about some detail that wasn't to her satisfaction. When she turned and saw me approaching, her smile vanished instantly. Her eyes narrowed as they scanned my outfit from top to bottom. "You cannot be serious right now," she said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "You came to Dad's biggest night looking like that?" I took a deep breath, determined to stay calm. "Hello to you too, Brittany. I came straight from work. I've been in meetings all day." "We've all been working, Alexandra," she said, stepping directly in front of the entrance. "The rest of us managed to dress appropriately. This is a black tie event, not a day at your cubicle." "I don't work in a cubicle," I said quietly, trying to move past her. "And I'm here for Dad, not for a fashion show." Brittany placed her hand on my shoulder, physically stopping me. "No cheap clothes at Dad's party," she said firmly. "This is an important night for our family's reputation. These are potential investors and business partners." The humiliation burned through me as I noticed several guests watching our interaction with undisguised interest. I could feel my cheeks flushing with embarrassment and anger. "Brittany, this is ridiculous. I'm wearing business attire. It's not like I showed up in sweatpants." "Business casual is not appropriate for this event," she insisted. Everyone else made an effort. "You know how important appearances are to Dad." That stung because there was some truth to it. Dad did care about appearances, about projecting success and professionalism. It was one of the values that had driven a wedge between us over the years. "I made an effort by coming here despite working 14 hours today," I countered. I thought that's what would matter to him. Noah appeared behind Brittany, his expression shifting from welcoming to concerned as he assessed the situation. "What's going on?" he asked, looking between us. "Alexandra thinks Dad's milestone celebration isn't important enough to dress properly for," Brittany announced. Noah gave me an apologetic look. "Your outfit is fine, Alex. Come on in." "No," Brittany said firmly. Everyone else followed the dress code. "We have the governor here, for God's sake. The CEO of First National Bank. I'm not letting her embarrass Dad in front of these people." I could see Dad in the distance, surrounded by well-wishers, completely unaware of the drama unfolding at the entrance. He looked happy, proud, completely in his element. The last thing I wanted was to create a scene that would distract from his moment. "This is absurd," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "I'm his daughter. I have every right to be here." "You have the right to be here when you're dressed appropriately," Brittany retorted. "Go home, change, and come back. It's that simple." Several more guests had stopped to watch our confrontation, their expressions ranging from curiosity to discomfort. I felt like a spectacle, exactly what I had always tried to avoid. "Britt, come on," Noah pleaded. "This is between us. Let's not do this in front of everyone." But Brittany was unmoved. "I've spent 6 months planning this perfect evening for Dad. I'm not letting it be ruined because Alexandra couldn't bother to put on a proper dress." The hurt cut deeper than I wanted to admit. After everything I had accomplished, after all the late nights and sacrifices, I was still being judged solely on my appearance. By my own sister, no less. "If I'm such an embarrassment," I said quietly, "then I'll leave. Tell Dad I tried to come." "I'll tell him you had a work emergency," Brittany said, her tone softening slightly. "It's more believable than you not understanding basic dress codes." As I turned to leave, the weight of rejection heavy on my shoulders, I heard Brittany say to the event coordinator, If she tries to come back without changing, please alert security. That final indignity was too much. Tears threatened to spill over as I walked rapidly toward the exit, keeping my head down to avoid making eye contact with arriving guests. All I had wanted was to support Dad, to be there for his big moment. Instead, I had been publicly humiliated and banished by my own sister. As I pushed through the hotel's revolving door into the cool evening air, I wondered if I should just go home, change, and return as Brittany had suggested. But something inside me rebelled at the idea. Why should I have to change who I was to be accepted by my own family? I had just reached the parking area, fumbling for my phone to call a taxi, when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Alexandra? Alexandra Miller, is that you? I turned to see Marcus Westfield stepping out of a sleek black Bentley, his driver holding the door. At 72, Marcus still cut an impressive figure in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, his silver hair contrasting with his tan complexion. Mr. Westfield, I said, quickly wiping away the moisture from my eyes. What are you doing here? He approached with a warm smile. I decided to make an appearance at Richard Miller's celebration. The Westfield-Miller partnership is significant enough to warrant my personal attention. He paused, studying my expression. But the better question is, why are you leaving? Isn't this your father's event? The reality of the situation suddenly struck me. Marcus didn't know that Richard Miller was my father. I had been so careful to keep my family connections separate from my professional life that I had never mentioned it. As far as Marcus knew, Miller was just another company Westfield was investing in. Richard Miller is my father, I admitted. I was just leaving early. Marcus's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Your father? Why on earth didn't you mention this during our negotiations? I recused myself from all discussions regarding the Miller deal precisely because of that connection, I explained. I wanted to ensure there was no conflict of interest, or even the appearance of one. Marcus nodded slowly, a new respect appearing in his eyes. Integrity. That's why you're the youngest chairman in Westfield history. He glanced toward the hotel entrance. But you still haven't explained why you're leaving your father's celebration. I hesitated, embarrassed to admit the truth. My sister felt my attire wasn't appropriate for the event. She asked me to leave. Marcus looked genuinely confused as he examined my outfit. You're dressed exactly as you were for our board meeting earlier. Professional and appropriate. It's not formal enough for my sister's standards, I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. A slow smile spread across Marcus's face. Does your father know who you are at Westfield? No, I admitted. I was planning to tell him after the contract signing on Monday. Well, Marcus said, offering his arm, perhaps we should move that timeline up a bit. Would you do me the honor of escorting me into this party? My heart raced at the implication. Mr. Westfield, you don't have to do that. Marcus, please, he corrected. And I insist. I'd like to personally meet the father of my brilliant chairman. With a mixture of trepidation and growing excitement, I took his offered arm and walked back toward the hotel entrance. As we approached, I could see Brittany still standing near the door, now chatting animatedly with a group of guests. Her eyes widened in shock when she spotted me returning with Marcus Westfield. Sir, the doorman said respectfully, welcome to the Miller celebration. Brittany quickly excused herself from her conversation and hurried over, her expression a complex mixture of confusion and alarm. Mr. Westfield, she said, completely ignoring me, what an honor to have you join us tonight. I'm Brittany Miller, Vice President of Miller Construction and daughter of Richard Miller. Marcus shook her hand politely. A pleasure, Ms. Miller. I see you've already met our chairman at Westfield. Brittany's smile faltered. I'm sorry. Alexandra Miller, Marcus said, gesturing to me. Chairman of Westfield Investments. I had no idea until just now that she was Richard's daughter. What a remarkable family you have. The color drained from Brittany's face as she processed this information. Her eyes darted between Marcus and me, struggling to reconcile what she was hearing with her understanding of my career. There must be some mistake, she said weakly. My sister works in middle management at an investment firm. Marcus laughed heartily. Middle management? My dear, your sister is the youngest chairman in our company's 100-year history. She oversees more than $40 billion in investments worldwide. He turned to me with a conspiratorial smile. You really haven't told your family? I wanted to succeed on my own merits, I said quietly, without the Miller name opening doors for me. Understanding dawned in Marcus's eyes. And succeed you have. He turned back to Brittany, whose composure was rapidly crumbling. Now, shall we proceed? I believe your father is expecting me. Brittany stepped aside wordlessly, her previous authority completely deflated. As we walked into the ballroom, heads turned to observe Marcus Westfield's entrance. I could feel the weight of dozens of curious stares, particularly as guests recognized me as the woman who had just been turned away at the door. We approached the center of the room where my father stood speaking with the governor. Dad looked distinguished in his tuxedo, his gray hair and confident stance reflecting the successful businessman he had become. When he turned and saw Marcus, his face lit up with genuine pleasure. Marcus Westfield, he said, extending his hand. This is truly an honor. I wasn't expecting you personally. I wouldn't miss it, Richard, Marcus replied warmly, especially after learning of our unexpected connection. He gestured toward me. Madam Chairman, I didn't know this was your father's celebration. Dad's expression shifted from confusion to shock as he looked between us. Chairman? Alexandra. What is he talking about? Before I could respond, Marcus continued. Your daughter has led Westfield Investments to our most profitable year in decades. Though she recused herself from all negotiations regarding your company due to the family connection. It was her strategic vision that identified Miller Construction as a perfect investment opportunity in the first place. The room had grown quieter as nearby guests tuned into our conversation. I could see Noah approaching from the corner of my eye, his expression a mixture of confusion and growing delight. Alexandra, Dad said, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain, is this true? I nodded, suddenly feeling a strange mix of relief and apprehension. Yes. I've been with Westfield for 9 years. I was appointed chairman 6 months ago. Dad seemed to be struggling to process this information. But why didn't you tell me? Perhaps, Marcus interjected gently, this conversation would be better continued privately. I'd be happy to elaborate on your daughter's remarkable achievements at Westfield, but first, I believe congratulations are in order for your company's expansion. Shall we toast to our partnership? Dad nodded automatically, years of business instincts taking over despite his obvious shock. As he signaled for champagne, I caught Brittany watching us from across the room, her expression unreadable. Later, as the formal toasts concluded and guests began to mingle again, Marcus pulled me aside. Your family situation reminds me of my own early days, he said thoughtfully. My father was a self-made man who couldn't understand why I wanted to forge my own path instead of joining his business. How did you resolve it? I asked. Time and truth, he replied. Eventually, he saw that my success didn't diminish his legacy, it expanded it. He glanced toward my father, who was watching us from across the room. Your father seems like a reasonable man. Give him a chance to adjust to this new reality. Thank you for everything tonight, I said sincerely. Marcus smiled. I should be thanking you. Your leadership at Westfield has been transformative. He lowered his voice. And just between us, the real reason I decided to invest in Miller Construction wasn't just the financials. It was because I investigated the company culture. Any man who raised a daughter with your integrity and vision must be doing something right. With that surprisingly personal revelation, Marcus excused himself to speak with other guests, leaving me to prepare for the inevitable confrontation with my family. After Marcus departed to mingle with other guests, Dad approached me. His expression a complex mixture of confusion, pride, and hurt. 9 years, he said quietly. 9 years at Westfield, and you never told me. We had moved to a quieter corner of the ballroom, away from the curious eyes of the other guests. The celebration continued around us, but it felt like we were in our own bubble of tension and unspoken questions. I wanted to make it on my own, I explained, without the Miller name opening doors for me. Did you think I wouldn't be proud of you? Dad asked, and the genuine pain in his voice made my chest tighten. That I wouldn't support you building your own path? It wasn't about that, I said, choosing my words carefully. After Mom died, everything became about the family business, about appearances and connections. I needed to know if I could succeed based purely on my own abilities. Dad was silent for a moment, processing this. And you thought I would interfere? Use my connections to advance your career. Wouldn't you have? I challenged gently. If you knew I was at Westfield, wouldn't you have called Marcus or other board members you know? Wouldn't you have tried to help? His silence was confirmation enough. I needed to do this myself, I continued. And I planned to tell you after the contract signing on Monday. I just wanted to be certain there was no conflict of interest, that the deal was based solely on business merit. Noah joined us, his eyes bright with excitement. Alex, this is incredible. You're the chairman of Westfield? The whole company. I nodded, feeling a small smile break through my tension. For the past 6 months. Why am I just hearing about this now? Noah asked. But his tone was curious rather than accusatory. Before I could answer, Brittany approached. Her composure recovered, but her eyes still betraying her shock. I think we all want to know the answer to that question, she said, her voice artificially pleasant for the benefit of nearby guests. Among others. Perhaps we should continue this discussion in private, Dad suggested, gesturing toward a small conference room adjacent to the ballroom. Once inside with the door closed, Brittany's facade dropped immediately. So this was all some elaborate scheme, she demanded. You deliberately misled us about your position to what, make us look foolish tonight? That's not fair. Noah interjected. Alex didn't plan for this to happen. Didn't she? Brittany countered. She shows up intentionally underdressed, knowing full well who she really is. Creating this whole dramatic revelation in front of everyone that matters in Dad's business circle. I came directly from work after a 14-hour day, I said firmly. I wanted to be here for Dad. You're the one who made it a public spectacle by blocking me at the door. How was I supposed to know you're some big-shot chairman? Brittany demanded. You've been pretending to be a nobody for years. I never said I was a nobody, I corrected. I just didn't broadcast my position. There's a difference. Dad held up his hands. Enough, both of you. He turned to me, his expression softening slightly. Alexandra, while I'm trying to understand your reasons, I can't help feeling that you didn't trust me. That hurts. His honesty caught me off guard. In our family, feelings were rarely discussed so directly. I'm sorry, I said sincerely. It wasn't about not trusting you. It was about needing to trust myself. To know that I could build something without the safety net of the Miller name. And now you're the chairman of the company that's investing in Dad's business, Brittany said. Her tone suggesting she still suspected some kind of manipulation. Quite a coincidence. I recused myself from all negotiations related to Miller Construction. I explained for what felt like the 10th time. The deal was handled entirely by our acquisitions team. I didn't even know it was in progress until it reached the board level for final approval. Dad studied me for a long moment. And you kept your position secret all this time to avoid even the appearance of a conflict of interest? I nodded. Integrity matters to me, Dad. I learned that from you. Something shifted in his expression then, a softening around the eyes that reminded me of how he used to look at me when I was younger. Before the complications of adulthood had created barriers between us. Your mother would be proud, he said quietly. She always said you had a mind for business, but a heart that wouldn't be corrupted by it. The mention of Mom, so rare in our family conversations, created a momentary silence. Her absence was still a palpable thing, even after all these years. Noah cleared his throat. So what happens now? With Westfield and Miller Construction, I mean. The deal proceeds as planned. I said. It's a solid business decision that benefits both companies. My personal connection doesn't change the fundamentals. And what about us? Dad asked. The question encompassing far more than just business. Before I could answer, there was a knock at the door. The event coordinator poked her head in apologetically. Mr. Miller. The mayor has arrived and is asking to speak with you. And Mr. Westfield is preparing to leave and would like to say goodbye. Dad nodded. Tell them I'll be right there. He turned back to us. We need to finish this conversation, but right now we have guests waiting. Can we all agree to put on a united front for the remainder of the evening? Brittany straightened her posture, slipping back into her role as the perfect daughter. Of course, Dad. Alexandra. Dad looked at me questioningly. I'm here for you, Dad, I assured him. That's all I wanted tonight. As we prepared to return to the party, Brittany pulled me aside. I may have overreacted at the door, she said stiffly, the closest thing to an apology I was likely to get. I had no idea about your position. Would it have mattered? I asked honestly. If I was just a middle manager like you thought, would that have made it okay to treat me that way? She had no answer for that, and I didn't really expect one. Some realizations take longer to sink in than others. As we rejoined the celebration, I was acutely aware of how differently people were looking at me now. The same guests who had witnessed my humiliation at the door were now regarding me with new interest and respect. It was a stark reminder of how quickly perceptions can change based on status and position. But the night was still young, and the real test of our family dynamics was just beginning. As we returned to the main celebration, the atmosphere had subtly shifted. Word had spread quickly about my position at Westfield, and guests who had previously overlooked me were now making efforts to introduce themselves. It was a stark illustration of how power and status color human interactions, something I had observed countless times in the business world but rarely experienced so personally. Dad was pulled away to speak with the mayor, while Brittany busied herself ensuring everything continued to run smoothly. Noah stayed by my side, fielding questions from curious guests with a protective brotherly energy that I appreciated. Ladies and gentlemen, the event coordinator announced over the microphone, Mr. Miller has requested that we proceed with the scheduled speeches. If you could all direct your attention to the main stage. This was a part of the evening I hadn't anticipated. As vice president, Brittany would typically give a speech at company functions, followed by Dad. I found a seat at a table near the back, content to observe rather than participate. Dad took the stage first, thanking everyone for coming and speaking eloquently about the journey of Miller Construction from its humble beginnings to the major expansion being celebrated tonight. He acknowledged key team members and partners, his natural charisma shining through as he shared anecdotes that had the crowd laughing and nodding in appreciation. And now, he said, winding down his remarks, I'd like to invite a very special guest to say a few words about our new partnership with Westfield Investments. Many of you have already met her tonight, but what you may not know is that she is not only the chairman of Westfield but also my daughter. Alexandra, would you please join me? My heart jumped into my throat. This wasn't planned. I glanced at Brittany, whose tight smile couldn't quite mask her surprise and displeasure. Noah gave me an encouraging nod. With no graceful way to decline, I made my way to the stage, my mind racing to compose appropriate remarks. Dad embraced me briefly before stepping aside, giving me the podium. Thank you, Dad, I began, taking a deep breath to center myself. For those I haven't had the chance to meet yet, I'm Alexandra Miller. While I've had the privilege of building my career at Westfield Investments, I remain a Miller at heart. With all the values of hard work, integrity, and perseverance that my father instilled in me. The crowd responded warmly, and I felt myself settling into the familiar rhythm of public speaking that had become second nature in my role at Westfield. Though I recused myself from the negotiations between our companies to avoid any conflict of interest, I can tell you that Westfield's decision to partner with Miller Construction was based purely on the company's exceptional track record, solid financials, and innovative vision for the future. I glanced at my father, allowing genuine pride to show in my expression. The fact that the company was founded by one of the most dedicated and principled businesspeople I know was, I admit, a personal point of pride for me. I continued by outlining the potential I saw in the partnership, drawing on my extensive knowledge of the market without revealing any confidential information. As I spoke, I could see my father watching me with growing appreciation, perhaps seeing me truly as a professional equal for the first time. In closing, I said, I want to congratulate my father, the entire Miller Construction team, and everyone who has contributed to making this company what it is today. The best is yet to come, and Westfield is honored to be part of that journey. Thank you. The applause was enthusiastic, and as I stepped away from the podium, Marcus Westfield approached the stage, taking my hand in a gesture of public support. I couldn't have said it better myself. He told the crowd. When we at Westfield look for investment opportunities, we look beyond the balance sheets to the people behind the company. In both Miller Construction and its remarkable founder, we've found partners who share our values of excellence and integrity. And he added with a warm smile in my direction. Apparently, the talent for leadership runs in the family. As we returned to the floor, guests approached me with business cards and invitations to lunch. Suddenly eager to connect with the Westfield chairman they had discovered in their midst. I handled each interaction professionally, but couldn't help noting the irony of being so warmly welcomed by the same crowd that had witnessed my rejection hours earlier. Later, Dad found me near the dessert table and pulled me aside for a private moment. That was quite a speech, he said, genuine admiration in his voice. You've really come into your own. Thank you. I replied, feeling a weight lifting that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. That means a lot coming from you. He hesitated, seeming to choose his words carefully. I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about needing to make your own way. Your mother used to tell me I was too controlling, too focused on mapping out you kids' futures. He smiled sadly. She'd be pleased to see you forging your own path, even if it meant keeping secrets from your old man. I never wanted to hurt you, Dad, I said softly. I just needed to know I could do it on my own. And you've done more than that, he acknowledged. You've surpassed anything I could have imagined for you. He paused, his expression growing more serious. I owe you an apology for tonight. Brittany told me she was concerned about the dress code, but I had no idea she would actually turn you away. That should never have happened. It's not entirely your fault, I conceded. Our family has always put a premium on appearances. That's part of why I needed to step away, to find my own values. Dad nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps it's time we all reassessed our priorities. Our conversation was interrupted by Brittany, who approached with forced casualness. Since my speech, she had been keeping her distance, clearly trying to process the dramatic shift in our family dynamic. Dad, the governor is leaving and wants to say goodbye, she said. Then added with visible effort, Alexandra, his wife mentioned she'd love to meet you before they go. Thank you, Brittany, I replied, appreciating the small olive branch for what it was. As Dad walked ahead to meet the governor, Brittany hung back momentarily. Your speech was good, she admitted grudgingly. Very professional. Coming from Brittany, this was high praise indeed. Thank you, I said simply, resisting the urge to point out how differently the evening might have gone if she had been more welcoming from the start. I still don't understand why you kept it all secret, she continued, genuine confusion in her voice. Do you know how many doors I could have opened for you at Westfield if I'd known? I smiled at the irony. That's exactly why I didn't tell you. I needed those doors to open because of my work, not because of who I knew. She shook her head, clearly still not fully comprehending my perspective. Well, now that everything's in the open, we should talk about potential synergies between our companies. I have some ideas for how Miller Construction could expand its financial services division with Westfield's expertise. Always the businesswoman. Brittany was already looking for advantages in the new situation. In a strange way, it was comforting to see some things hadn't changed. Let's schedule a proper meeting after the contract signing, I suggested, with the appropriate teams from both companies present. Right, she said, slightly deflated by my professional boundary setting. Of course. As the evening wound down, I found myself in a fascinating conversation with Marcus and my father, discussing potential areas for innovation in the construction finance space. It was the first time I had been able to engage with Dad as a true peer in the business world, and I could see him adjusting to this new dynamic in real time. His initial shock giving way to genuine respect. You know, Marcus said thoughtfully, there might be an opportunity here beyond the current investment deal. Richard, what would you think about a joint venture focused specifically on sustainable building technologies? It's an emerging market with tremendous potential. Dad looked intrigued. We've been developing some proprietary methods for reducing energy consumption in commercial buildings. It's still in the early stages, but with the right financial backing. Alexandra has been championing our green investment initiative at Westfield, Marcus noted. Perhaps the three of us should discuss this further in a more formal setting. The conversation continued, evolving naturally into a preliminary business discussion that felt surreal in its normalcy, given the dramatic revelations of the evening. Noah joined us, contributing insightful comments about marketing strategies for sustainable technologies that impressed even Marcus. By the time the last guests were departing, something fundamental had shifted in our family dynamic. The hierarchy had been disrupted, assumptions challenged, and a new equilibrium was beginning to form. It wasn't perfect, and there were clearly many more conversations needed, but it was a start. As I said goodbye to Marcus in the hotel lobby, he smiled knowingly. Family businesses are complicated, even when you're not officially part of the family business. That's an understatement, I replied with a rueful smile. Give them time, he advised. And yourself too. 9 years is a long time to maintain separate worlds. The integration won't happen overnight. His wisdom, born of decades of business and personal experience, was reassuring. As challenging as the evening had been, it had also been necessary, a breaking open of old patterns to make way for something new and potentially better. The question now was what that something better would look like and whether our family was ready to build it together. The months following Dad's celebration brought gradual but significant changes to our family dynamic. The formal signing of the Westfield Miller deal went smoothly, with both Dad and I maintaining professional boundaries during the proceedings. Once the contracts were finalized, we were free to explore our new relationship without concerns about conflicts of interest. Dad invited me to dinner the week after the signing, just the two of us. Something that hadn't happened since before Mom died. We met at her favorite restaurant, a small Italian place that had somehow survived the city's constantly changing landscape. Your mother loved their tiramisu, Dad recalled as we settled into our table. She said it was the closest thing to the one her grandmother used to make. I remember, I said, surprised by how vividly the memory returned. She would always save room for dessert, no matter how full she was. Dad smiled, a hint of melancholy in his eyes. She would be amazed to see who you've become, Alexandra. She always said you had a quiet strength that would take you far. That dinner became the first of many regular meetings. Sometimes with Noah joining us, occasionally even Brittany. Slowly, we began rebuilding connections that had frayed over the years, finding new ways to relate to each other as the adults we had become rather than the family roles we had once occupied. Brittany's adjustment to our new reality was predictably the most challenging. Years of defining herself as Dad's right hand and the family success story made it difficult for her to accept that I had achieved significant professional success outside her awareness or influence. I still don't understand why you started in the mailroom, she said during one of our increasingly frequent coffee meetings. You had a finance degree from Wharton. You could have started in management at least. I wanted to understand every aspect of the business, I explained. How could I eventually lead people whose jobs I had never experienced? She considered this, stirring her latte thoughtfully. I never thought of it that way. At Miller, I always had Dad to explain how everything worked. It was a small moment of insight, but meaningful coming from Brittany. Over time, these moments accumulated, gradually shifting her perspective. She remained ambitious and status-conscious, but began to develop a grudging respect for my different approach. The most unexpected development came 3 months after the party, when Dad announced a restructuring of Miller Construction's executive team. He created a new position, Executive Vice President of Innovation, and offered it to Noah, recognizing his creative vision in a way he never had before. I've been too rigid in how I think about leadership, Dad admitted during a family dinner celebrating Noah's promotion. Watching how Westfield operates under Alexandra's direction has made me reconsider many of my assumptions. Noah thrived in his new role, implementing creative solutions that had previously been dismissed as too unconventional. Brittany initially struggled with the change in hierarchy, but eventually found that sharing some leadership responsibilities actually allowed her to focus more deeply on the financial aspects of the business that truly engaged her. As for me, leading Westfield continued to be challenging and rewarding. Having my family finally understand and appreciate my work added a dimension of personal satisfaction I hadn't realized I was missing. I began mentoring young professionals within the company, particularly women seeking to advance in the male-dominated world of finance, sharing the lessons I had learned about building a career based on substance rather than connections. 6 months after Dad's party, I was invited to give the commencement address at my former business school. Standing at the podium, looking out at the eager faces of new graduates, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The world will constantly try to define your worth based on superficial metrics, I told them. Your clothes, your title, your connections, your family name. The true challenge of building a meaningful career is to define success on your own terms, to find value in the substance of your work rather than its appearance. I shared the story of that night at Dad's party, how being judged for my appearance had preceded being recognized for my accomplishments. The students laughed at the irony and nodded in recognition of the universal experience of being misjudged. The clothes you wear may determine the first impression you make, I concluded. But the work you do, the integrity you bring to it, and the values you uphold will determine your lasting impact. Build your career on that foundation, and no one can ever take your achievements away from you. After the ceremony, Dad approached me, having sat quietly in the audience without my knowledge. That was quite a lesson, he said, genuine pride in his voice. For them and for me. You came all this way for my speech? I asked, touched by the gesture. I've missed too many important moments in your life, he replied simply. I'm trying not to miss any more. That evening, our entire family gathered for dinner, including Dad's sister who had flown in to visit. As we shared stories and laughter around the table, I found myself reflecting on how far we had come. The path hadn't been straight or easy, but the journey had brought us to a place of greater understanding and respect for each other's differences. Brittany still occasionally rolled her eyes at my practical wardrobe choices, but the judgment had been replaced with what almost resembled affectionate teasing. Noah had found his voice within the family business, bringing fresh energy that benefited everyone. And Dad, perhaps most surprisingly, had begun to loosen his grip on control, discovering that sharing leadership created new possibilities rather than diminishing his legacy. As for me, I no longer felt the need to keep my world separate. I had proven to myself what I needed to prove, and in doing so, had found my way back to my family on new and healthier terms. The true value of success, I realized, isn't measured in titles or bank accounts or even recognition. It's measured in the integrity with which you pursue your path, the authentic connections you build along the way, and the positive impact you create through your work and relationships. That night at Dad's party, being judged for my appearance had been painful, but it had ultimately catalyzed a transformation that benefited our entire family. Sometimes the most difficult moments become the doorways to our most important growth. Have you ever been judged based on your appearance only to later prove your true worth? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes the most painful judgments lead to our greatest triumphs. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories, and share with someone who might need this reminder that their value goes far deeper than any surface judgment. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, true worth is never about how you look, but who you are and what you contribute to the world.